everybody. Heidi Harris here. Glad to have you here. Don't forget you can follow me, Heidi Harris Show, on all things social, and also check out my podcast and all the good stuff. And obviously, the content changes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you already know about politics or anything else. I prefer to talk about more interesting topics. And today, somebody I've followed for a long time, I'm so thrilled to have him here. His name is Jerry Del Colliano. He is a professor. He deals with kids. He's a professor in the music business program at NYU Steinhardt, Department of Music and Performing Arts Professions. Jerry, I'm so glad to have you here. Thanks for making the time.
It's my pleasure.
It's so fun. Now, you and I had gone back and forth a little bit on email, and I guess you're a little more left than I am. And you were kind of surprised that I read your column, and I don't know why, because I could see some of your bias in some things, but that's okay. That's your opinion. And I thought your insight, was very good on things. And you're hearing a lot of things from people behind the scenes in the industry and, what the kids are telling you and things like that. I have no problem with people having a different point of view than I do. I think one of the things we have that's too bad is an echo chamber that a lot of people live in nowadays.
Well, it's funny. A friend of mine who I've known a long time wrote to me the other day, and he said, your bias is showing. And I wrote back to him and I said, and so is yours, because at the time that he was saying my bias is showing, he's responding by saying his does. Look, we're living in a world that's divided down the middle, and we're going to eventually, not now, and I don't think in the next 8 years, are we going to put it back together again. And you can go back and study history, and I love to do that. If you go back and study history to the first pandemic we had 100 years ago, and we had a pandemic now 100 years later. We had the Roaring 20s. Guess what we're in right now? The Roaring 20s. How do I know that? Because young people and everyone, particularly millennials, will go out and say, I'm going on my vacation, damn it, no matter what. And this is my time. I'm sick of being cooped up. And there's that. Of course, you remember after the pandemic and after the Roaring 20s, history tells us that we had a depression. I don't know whether we'll have a depression, but there's a lot of people smarter than I am who think we'll have certainly a recession. Some think a deep recession. And then again, if you go back to history, you'll see that what happened with that depression, it went on for a long time. A lot of things were transformational, but then we had a war. And that's what I think is going to happen again. I think that eventually we will have a war, and it will reunite the country. We'll either have the war here in this country, or it'll be in another country. It'll be a civil war, some kind of war. Whatever it is, we're going to have to get back on the same side and love each other again. And I can't tell you how thrilled I am to hear you tell me you want to hear about my students, because I could talk about them all day and all night, because I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be able to work with the next great generation, which is Gen Z.
It's absolutely fabulous. And I see you writing about them in your column and what kids tell you about their listening habits. Talk to me a little bit. First of all, for those who don't know you and your history, give them a little bio about you, and then we'll talk about what the kids are telling you.
All right. I got started in radio first, and I was very shy as a child. People usually laugh when they hear that and they know me, but it's really true. And I still am in some ways, but I learned how to be on, as a lot of us in this industry have different aspects of our persona. And I had the chance to work with great program directors. I became a program director, and I started a publication called Inside Radio, which was eventually sold to Clear Channel in a settlement of a lawsuit. They sued me for $100 million. I countersued them for $125 million, and they settled. So I should have walked away from this business at that time, but I couldn't, because I love the people who are in this business, whether I agree with them or not. What's happening is they're being tortured by hedge funds and people who cannot and don't want to do the right thing to make radio a more important force. And there's so many things you have to put in focus if you're going to have this discussion, not the least of which is broadcasting and radio is linear. It's one to many. But we live in a digital age. So is it even possible? Is it even possible that linear media can thrive in a digital age? So let's put that aside. We may or may not get to it depending on what you want to do. But the other thing to keep in mind is that we are taking each other apart one way or the other. Hedge funds are making a fortune. They're taking their investors' money and they're keeping 6% of it generally for themselves, and trying to reward those who give them their money to invest. They don't care about the radio industry like we do. You know people in radio. I don't think I know anybody in radio that doesn't love this business. I can prove it because they work for less money than they're ever going to make.
I was going to say they're still in it. That's what proves they still love it, right? They're willing to eat dirt sometimes to stay in the business. That is true.
Beautiful, Heidi. I love that. I'm going to make a note. Eat dirt.
Unfortunately, it's true. Now, one of the things you often talk about when it comes to, the hedge funds and this, this company buying this company and buying this company and people getting fired is the people in the executive suites. They get raises. They never lose their jobs. Meanwhile, these poor jocks, some of them, if they've been lucky, been there 20 years, whatever. I mean, I see the carnage. You write about it. Other sites write about it. I mean, it just breaks my heart. These people have devoted their hearts and souls to a broadcasting career and they're out the door.
We have to bifurcate the issues because number one is that the people who are making money are the ones, the Mary Burners of the world that made over $50 million so far running Cumulus into the ground. You have Bob Pittman, who, if he's done anything well, he's taken care of Bob Pittman. And he's made plenty of money and he's run iHeart into the ground. You don't believe me? It's not an opinion. They are $5 billion in debt.
Yeah,
still.
Go look it up, folks.
But so there's that. And what we have to take into consideration is a number of different things. Linear versus digital. We're living in an age of greed. And by the way, these hedge funds were greedy, but so were the people who were selling the radio stations to get out. They couldn't get out of radio fast enough around the turn of the century. Sounds odd to say turn of the century, but back around 1999 when Prince was singing. So I'm thinking to myself, you've got that as an issue. But what really drives me is if you talk to young people, and remember, I have a great respect for them. And I teach in a wonderful program. Larry Miller put that program together at NYU, and it is. And I also was a professor full-time at University of Southern California. Same thing, music industry. So I've really had a lot of exposure, and I think it helps define the way I look at things. Because young people, you started out by wondering what we're doing wrong in radio, get these young people, and we're doing everything wrong. We're not talking about issues they care about. We don't sound like them. We're driving them away with commercials that aren't believable and remnant stuff and piling it on so that they can avoid bankruptcy as long as possible so that the people who are at the top can continue to milk these companies for a lot of money. So if we were to take all of that just as a quick preface and put it aside and say to ourselves, what could we do? I don't know, but I can tell you what not to do, what we're doing now, because radio has to sound like, when I say sound like the next generation, I'm a professor and, it may be that I'm not 19 years old like some of my students are, but if I don't sound like them, if I don't sound believable, if I don't sound engaged, enthusiastic, they're probably not going to give me much credibility. And radio doesn't sound that way. We don't do anything for them. And why? Well, we have mental health issues greater than ever among this generation, mostly given to them by the phones that we've put into their hands. They're not going to take their phones away. So we're going to have to teach them. Mental health is such a big issue. I teach a course now at NYU called Stress-Free Living and Working in the Music Business because 73% of the people who are in the music industry are going to wind up with addictions or anxiety or some form of mental health problem, probably before they're 30.
Well, wait a
Yes.
second. I want to stop you right there. That is huge. I did not realize it. Now, Odyssey, the company I work for, shameless plug, does a podcast about that mental health. And you're right. It's so important. I had no idea that 73% of the people who get in the music industry by the time they're 30 are going to have some major issue.
Yeah, major is right.
Wow.
And my good friend, Ryan Dusick, who was the founding drummer of Maroon 5, went through hell and back again, had his life ruined. He was addicted to every substance on the face of the earth, including linoleum, I think. Just about everything you could get your hands on. He's the most wonderful human being, the kindest. When he comes to speak to my students, they relate to it. You don't look at Justin Bieber and say, why has this talented guy screwed himself up so badly,
So
economically
sad.
and otherwise? Why can he not stand up in front of an audience? Well, you know what? In the course that I teach, one of the sessions is about imposter syndrome. Now, let me ask you a question, Heidi, if I may, with all respect. Have you ever had imposter syndrome? Have you ever gone to the public mic and felt to yourself that you don't belong there?
Oh, there's nobody who doesn't. You feel like someone's going to tap you on the shoulders and say, you're not good enough to be here.
Let me
And
ask you, then what do you do? Do you run away or do you go on anyway?
well, I go on anyway because I have a different perspective. I have a spiritual perspective on it. I do believe that God has called me to do this because I've had people trying to get me off the air since 1998, go after me in one way or another. And I'm still surviving. And I do think I have an ability to do this. But there are days all of us deal with self-doubt. All of us
Yes.
say, I'm not good at go on social media and see all as you're referring to, and look at all these people who were doing all these things. You go, oh, well, all I did today was laundry. And they're doing all these things. And the hardest part for me, and I don't want to talk about me in this, I want to talk about you and your students. I will say this: the hardest part of this business for me, and I put this in my book, my second book, Don't Pat Me on the Head, shameless plug. The hardest part for me is the self promotion. I can't stand it. Look at me, watch me, follow me. Let me post something else about this. Let me post something else about that. I literally recoil at the thought of doing it. Now I have to do it because it's part of what I do. And if I want people to see our conversation, I'm going to have to promote it. But it pains me to promote myself. That's not the part of the business that I've ever liked too much. So it makes it very difficult. And then you think, well, am I just being braggy? I'm not being braggy. I'm just putting it out there. But who really cares? But I mean, there's always self-doubt in this occupation.
Well, you know what? I'm happy to hear you say that because people don't believe it anyway. So we might as well get over it and concentrate on one other thing that young people will respond to, and that is the relentless pursuit of authenticity.
Mhm.
They want authenticity. That doesn't mean that I have to promote anything that I've done, said. I don't talk about myself to this because they don't care. They know that I'm there for a reason. They hired me at New York University, so I must be able to know the material. But they don't want me. They don't want that. They don't. And out of a class of 29 people last semester, my stress-free living class, when I asked the question in front of a psychologist who deals with it, 29 out of 29 hands went up about being a fraud. So I always tell the story that when I first got into television, it was because I sent my voice to the television stations in Philadelphia every month, and I never got an answer ever
Hmm.
until one day I got a phone call from the ABC affiliate, and they said, we need a booth announcer for 2 days. That's it. This is not a full-time job. No problem. You've done this before? Oh, yes, I have, as my nose grew. And so when I got to the television station, I knew that at 19 years old, I should not be in that building doing that.
Right. Right.
But the difference is that I said, until you figure out that I'm an imposter, I'm going to learn how to do this the right way. And you're going to give me the experience. And that's a lot of these students are very talented. So a lot of them are singers, performers. And so what we try to concentrate on is many positive things about the way we live and the way we treat other people. And then we can go right back into the world we live in today. We don't live in a world where we're nice to people in politics in both parties, from the top to the bottom. The Trump is not a nice guy, and the people who attack him are not nice. I mean, nobody likes that. And so we're going to evolve eventually. And I think that as we evolve, some things are going to happen. We're going to come close together because of some cataclysmic event, which I think will be a war, which unites us, just like World War II united everybody. And then after World War II, we had a period of time when everyone got along and America was a wonderful place to be. And it slipped away as each decade went on until we got back to the mess we're in right now. That's history. So, you
Yeah.
can say, no, you're crazy, and maybe I am crazy, but that's what I think is going to happen.
Right.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
when you look at radio and you look at missed opportunities, you say, Jerry, you talked about linear versus digital, and radio can never be digital. It's never going to be digital. Never. I don't care what you say. It is one to many.
Yeah.
So is it over? Is it hopeless? And I would say that pretty much it's hopeless the way radio people are doing it. But there are some caveats. Number one, you'll notice there are events like 47 of the top 50 television shows are linear football games where people gather together and watch an event one to many. We also know that local radio tends to do better than the radio from
Exactly.
these
That's what I was going to say. You'll
from,
never get away from the need for local and that connection with the community.
but you will lose them if you don't talk about, if you don't have people who sound like the audience, who
Hmm.
talk about things the audience cares about
Right.
and does it in a way that's compelling. You know, a talk show. How do we do a talk show? Well, we do a talk show by starting on the top of the hour, priming the pump, getting ready to take our phone calls. We may take the phone calls after the first commercial break. Who's going to stay around for that in a TikTok world? The way you do radio is the way we do TikTok. Someone
Hmm.
will wake up and say, you know, maybe we'll ask the professor, would the students want radio? No, they don't want it. I ask them all the time. They don't like it. You say, well, they don't like it because you don't like it. I love it. I spent a lot of my life in it. And I love the people who are in it. I don't care for the ones that are running it. But so there are chances, there are opportunities, Heidi, that we're not taking. And just one more second on local, your local morning show, um, people who have a relationship with the audience, but it's not young people. Young people like the morning zoos that were all fired because companies like iHeart and Cumulus and Odyssey wanted to save money. Um, fire people, put the support staff up and let them do the show for less money. That's not what they want. They want a connection. So I can't predict that radio will ever come back. I'm not optimistic, but I will tell you that if I owned a radio station, this is the question I always hate to get, and I get it a lot. I wouldn't do a damn thing that anyone is doing now on radio. I would not do a thing they're doing now. They are
Interesting.
violating every possible opportunity they have to start a relationship with a population that is in need of connection.
Hmm. I can think of a few stations that are doing well. My former station in St. Louis and also in South Carolina that I do a lot of work for. They do it well because they have local hosts who know the neighborhood, know the players, and that's essential. And there are others around there, but I agree with you. A lot of stations aren't. They'll bring in people who don't know even how to pronounce the streets, and it doesn't do anybody any good. Or and as a talk show host, I'm prejudiced in this area. They'll have talk show hosts who are mealy mouthed, who will never go after City Hall, who will never go after a Republican, a governor or senator or anything else. I mean, that to me, that's not being, very honest about it. You got to go after these people too. That's what your audience wants to hear because they're mad about something that's going on with City Hall. You've got to talk about it, and you've got to be willing to say, if I never have the mayor on my show again, I don't care. The mayor's doing something wrong. There's a lot less of that nowadays because a lot of people are playing it safe. They're terrified to lose their jobs, and they're trying to play it safe, and that doesn't work.
I think you're correct about the older audience having that affinity to their radio stations, but as far as young people are concerned, it's not there. There's no real connection on any major level, and until there is, you cannot replace the older radio listeners who are aging out with younger listeners, and that's a big problem for the industry. You know, some of my students will say to me, you know, Professor, you think we're going to be Democrats, but we're not. And I don't know what they're going to be. The best professor is the dumbest one in the room. That's what I've learned. Don't think you're so smart because you'll learn nothing. So they'll say, "Well, what do you want?" And what they want is to get along. I hear that all the time. Just want to get
Mm.
along. Well, we don't live in that world. Why don't we live in that world? Because baby boomers are running the world. And who are baby boomers? They are people that were defined by the Vietnam War, for Vietnam or against Vietnam. They were defined by racial issues. for a lot of the racial issues that Martin Luther King fought for or against it. Now, these people are now in Washington in control. They don't have skills of getting along. Some do. I mean, I'm generalizing, and it's not fair to generalize, uh, but the reason we're not getting along is because the people who are in charge don't have those skill sets.
No. And they're
And my
stoking the fires. They're constantly stoking the fires either
right,
to get clicks or to get their
yes,
programs done or to
mm,
keep themselves employed. They want
yes,
people angry. They want us at each
yes,
other's throats so that we don't
yes,
notice what they're doing.
or get elected because it
Right.
works. It works. It works every time there's an election. And then, of course, we like to carry their ads on the radio to help, all of us. And so to get through this next 8 years, which is what I think it's really going to take to cleanse everything and start over, we're going to have a lot of things that happen that we're not going to like. And the radio industry has lost its way. And yet you have, I know, already, and you know that I have many, many friends in this business who love communicating, who love doing radio. Don't tell me it couldn't be done because I know it could be done. I think we could do a much better job aiming for younger audiences too, so that we have audiences to grow into other formats. We're not doing any of that. It's not just about music, because if you want to take this poison pill that I'm giving you today, you'll have to accept the following, and that is Spotify is the new music radio. Radio is not ever going to be what it was before when it came to the music industry. I'm a music industry professor. I can tell you I love radio, but I can tell you that you got to be blind not to see that that Spotify and streaming music services and YouTube, which we hardly ever talk about, which is major, uh, are important. And that's we get our music that way, not from radio. So that's changed. So radio has to find a different purpose. And what do? 80 or more percent of the stations play music because it's the cheapest thing to do. It's the most cost effective. And then when we don't do that, I sat down with a CEO of one of these companies that's screwing up. I won't mention names because
Because
it was
they're
a
all,
private
and
conversation.
it's too
But
long a list to mention here in this.
well, but the CEO said to me, I don't know what to do with my AM station, so I just put conservative talk
Plug
radio
and
programs
play,
on it.
same old people in
Yeah.
every market. It's funny. I was listening online to a station I won't mention the name of or the company. It was in Texas. It was a Tejano station. All right, whether you like that kind of music or not, fine. I just happened to listen to it. Sounded good, good station, that kind of thing. You feel like eating nachos when you're listening to it. Okay, great. But then the whitest white guy you ever heard in your life pops in to make some kind of announcement. And I thought, what is wrong with this? This is what's wrong. You don't have the whitest white guy in the world doing the announcements or, voice tracking, as we call it in the business, or whatever. It didn't work, and it's just lazy. And I was kind of horrified, frankly.
Remember, we have to sound like our audience. By that, I
Yes.
don't mean we have to employ everyone 15 years old, but we have to be relatively cool and hip. In other words, you can't stand in front of somebody and expect to entertain them if you're going to say, let me bring you back to 1929.
In
It's
my
not
day,
going to.
you can't do it. Let's go back to the mental health situation with the young people now, because
Yeah.
when I was in high school, if I had nothing going on that Friday night, then I would sit home and watch The Love Boat and be depressed. Okay. But here's the thing. I didn't realize what my friends were doing without me. Now these kids pick up their phone, they look in their hand, and they see everybody's out having a great time without them. Talk about the fear of missing out that they get, and just the constant fear that their lives don't measure up to other people, which is just so much more magnified by social media because it's not even real. Everybody puts, one of my old producers used to call it the highlight reel on Facebook. It's not your real life. Everybody should know that. It's only the good pictures of you, only the happy times your kids are smiling. It's not the reality. And it's hard for kids to be able to really comprehend that, I think.
Well, I think when you take a look at social media and really take a good look, you'll see that for young people, from their point of view, and I agree with them, they want to stay connected because they're lonely. It is the
Yes.
loneliest generation we've seen. You would not
Right.
believe, you know what I do in every one of my classes? I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it publicly. Um, every class I teach, I spend the first 5 minutes having my students go over and talk to someone they don't know.
Wow. Good for you.
And in the beginning, they think that I'm crazy, which I am certified, which they find out later. But that's okay. They understand the reason and they'll feed it back at the end of the course
Hmm.
because they're in the same room. No phones, no screens. Oh, professor, I want to take notes. Nah, I'm not going to say anything that important. No notes. No, I won't hear of it. So what happens is you can take notes the old-fashioned way if you want. Nobody's stopping you, but we're going to focus. And these classes focus. So these kids are good.
Hmm.
What they're afraid of, and I agree with them, is that if they make themselves absent from social media, they're going to be even more lonely.
So on the one hand, they know that the phone is bad, detrimental to their mental health. But on the other hand, they feel as if they put the phone down and get away from things, and then they won't have any community at all. It's pretty scary.
They'll be disconnected. I have had students who spend 7 hours a day on TikTok, and they can prove it. And when I
Wow.
said, would you like to find a way to become less dependent? The answer was no, I'm
Mm,
happy. So I've
wow.
seen all different things. And yet in the stress class, some at the end, they come up with a life plan for how they're going to attack living in this world. And some of the things they come back with are really fascinating, like trying to balance being focused. Like I always say, everyone says that, we got to spend more time with our kids. No, no, don't do that. Spend more time focused with your kids,
Hmm.
whether it's 12 minutes, not 5 hours on a canoeing trip somewhere necessarily. Yes, you can do that, but it's the amount of time we have focused in the present. That's what people want. And that's what these young people want. And they complain about their parents because they say the parents are always on the phone.
Absolutely. I've heard people tell me that I've got friends who've children who said my mom's always on Facebook posting this, posting that, trying to get that dopamine rush. And the kids don't say that part, but we know what that is. And it's hard too,
No.
because when you're in the business you and I are in, obviously there are things I need to know about. I'm doing radio tomorrow in South Carolina and Monday. Okay. So I'll be doing 8 hours of radio in the next couple of days. I'm just kind of freelancing now, which is enough. That's enough. But because I have to immerse myself in a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily look at every day. The politics and this one hates that one and da 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 da. And I'm not going to do it the way anyone else does because I don't do it that way. But I find it soul crushing. But as an adult, when I walked away from a full time job, it was to me it was a huge relief just to not have to be in that. Wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and hit the breaking news and who hates who and who said this and who said that. But I still have to pay attention to it. So do you. It's very hard to strike that balance. My husband and I went camping a couple months ago to a place where there was no internet. No internet, Jerry, 3 days.
Panic.
I get halfway down the mountain and I thought, oh wow, that's pathetic, really pathetic. But you're right, to your student's point. A lot of people who are their parents' age and older are totally addicted to it. Also,
I'm writing about this in one of my day starters that I write, and that is that, um, you know, people don't necessarily want to be. Um, Let me speak about my students in the stress class. What they will say, because they get a chance to grade the teachers. I talk about that in this
oh,
piece. At the end of it, it's a great thing we have at New York University. So they get a chance to say, I like you, I don't like you, and here's why. But things that they like are really fascinating. Like they like to feel safe. And when I grew up, I felt safe in school. I always felt safe in school. But
right.
they've never been in school without having active shooter drills. Think
That is
about
no,
that.
I don't. I want to stop you there. That is a huge point. You and I never ever went to school feeling like we were in danger by going to school. And
And
and the and the bad guy was outside the house. The bad guy wasn't in their phone. But it's very interesting that they feel less safe in ways that we didn't as children.
and the bad guy isn't necessarily just the bad guy anymore. It could be the person we elected because a lot of them don't feel safe in this country based
Mhm.
on a lot of stuff that they hear, whether it's rhetoric or not. And it is upsetting to them. So there's that. We went to school before 9/11. 9/11 changed everything. We never lived through a pandemic. They did. So when they
Right.
come to the classroom, and this is something Larry Miller, the head of our department, always, it's a wonderful thing he does before every school year starts. He sends a little situationer, which reminds us of what the freshman class is like. Here's who they are. Just remember this. They're not
Mm.
interested in me or what I went through, nothing personal. But you might be interested to know that they don't relate to a lot of stuff. They don't want to hear your stories. They want you to understand where they are and then help them along in this process of learning,
Right.
which professors have so many wonderful. We have them in our school, in our department. They have so many wonderful ways of showing students that they care for them and help them. That it's the most wonderful activity that you could ever have the honor of being in. And so when I look at it, I don't look at it in terms of, well, I loved radio as a kid so much so that I wanted to be on the radio. It got me out of my shyness and got me into being able to scream and yell on the air. Yeah, no, but that's not all it did. It meant a lot more. And then over time, when I think the worst thing was consolidation, when it came along and people sold out and the money came in and the greed. But that's what happened in our world. Our world is like that too. So the encouraging news, and I always tell my students, the human being cannot live without hope. And so our job should be giving people hope, give them something to live for, to look
Right.
forward to.
Right.
When we program radio stations, and I was a program director at 03 and 33, we had a promo in my music stations that I programmed, and that was hope. That was hope of what was coming up next. At
Contest
night,
coming up, something coming
and,
up next.
and at 1949, we're going to talk about the contest and what you could win or what you can get. So but and even with my kids when they were real little, I kind of think I raised them by the Bill Drake format. I think I raised them with promos. At 03 and 33, there was always a promo out of their dad. And even to this day, I can't help myself. I'm like that. So, but
But
it's
it's
not
funny
bad.
that you say that though, because I think that is something that we owe all these kids. Because there are a lot of kids you talk to, and you certainly talk to more than I do. I know some, but not nearly as many as you do. But a lot of them feel as if there's not going to be social security when they get older. They don't feel like there's much hope in getting a decent job, and I'm talking about normal kids, not kids with necessarily a lot of issues, just normal kids. They don't seem to be as hopeful as you and I were at their age. And that breaks my heart.
Well, they don't care about Social Security at this point because they're young. And it's not that they don't want it. It's not an issue that's right on the table. What they
Right.
don't realize is that they may not have Social Security, not because the government is bankrupt or overspending, as much as it is not committed to this entitlement program that is very popular with people. Right now, we're not going to agree on anything. And so all my friends who are on the right, who accuse me of being for Bernie Sanders, imagine that, and for liking AOC. Imagine them accusing me of that. I'm proud. I'm as proud as they are to say that they're for Trump and whoever else they're for. We have got to get along. We have got to find a way to to figure out that in the end, it's kind of like Professor Miller says in his email to the faculty. Put yourself in the shoes of the students who are becoming freshmen. Understand their situation so that you're not going to make assumptions. When I went to school, when I went to school, anybody could walk in and out at any hour of the day, and I never felt like anyone was going to hurt
Right.
me, and no one
Mhm.
ever got hurt in the school. This is not that generation of kids. And then when you add to it, we never had a phone, which is connected to a parent, a parent. And what are these parents doing? A lot of them are making decisions for kids so they're not resilient.
Oh,
They,
absolutely. They're tracking their kids every minute of the day. I had some friends whose daughter was driving somewhere, I mean, in town, and they're watching her on the tracker. I'm not a parent, so I didn't want to say anything. I just kind of tease them like, roof, 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 with the helicopter. I said, come on. I mean, you're tracking your kid. She's driving from one state to another. You're tracking your kid because she can't make it. When you do those kinds of things, and we've all had jobs where we've had a boss breathing down our neck all the time, double checking everything we do, then you lose confidence in your ability. You really
but
honestly think you can't do anything because your parents have convinced you that you can't walk across the street without somebody watching you. And you're right. They're not learning resilience at all. And that's very
no,
scary.
and we talked about this, the stress-free living class that we teach to musicians who are so talented, your mouth would drop if you could hear the
Mm.
voices on these people and the things that they can do at their age. And yet, what we seem to forget about is that they are this way um, for a reason, because they have not felt that it's okay to fail. My first job in radio, I uh, I was in college and it was the all night show in Philly. I don't know how I got the job, and but one night, 6 nights a week I worked. I used to sleep for a couple hours in the office before going to school the next day. I don't know how I did it. Well, one night I fell asleep on the air, and and it was a record. It was vinyl. It tracked through, and I said, "Thank God the program director is not." But the program director was Marlon Taylor, and he fired my ass the next day. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
unceremoniously. And I love Marlon even to this day. I admire him so much, and we are
So
good
funny.
friends because I needed to learn that lesson. The next job I had was in television, so I always thank Marlon for helping my television career.
No,
But
that's true though. But you don't
think
learn
about,
resilience.
but
Yeah,
see, that's resilience to say, I'm going to come back again after failing. Because when you give up is when you fail, not the number of times that you fall down.
that's right.
And I said to the students the other day, if you fall down 7 times, get up 8 times.
That's right.
And we some of us were born that way because we lived in different a time. And so we have to love these children and love these people from wherever they come, no matter how they identify. They say, well, they identify, they have different views about gender. And no, I don't have any different views. I love them, and believe me, I do. I don't care who they are, what they think of, how they identify, just
Hmm.
I love them. And that's how we're going to have to be. We're going to have to be open to judging people by who they are, what they stand for, and stop judging them on what we think is important. Life's tough enough as it is.
Yeah.
If you put all of this together and you take, you know, uh, how we were drawn to you and I and many people who are in this business, drawn to communicating for a lot of reasons. The industry changed on us. We didn't change on it.
Absolutely. It is completely changed. And, and we were talking earlier about the layoffs and things like that that have happened. And, back in what, 2008, 2009, once companies realized they could get three people to do the job of five or two people to do the job of five, that was the end of it. And it's never gone back and it will never go back. If you
And
want to
this is
stay in the
still,
business, you're doing the job of three people.
and this is still going on today. I mean, I'm working on a story for next week about Cumulus and about how they are firing market managers before their quarterly bonuses, if they've earned their bonuses, to get out of
Wow.
that. They give them 4 weeks. They give them 4 weeks severance pay, take it or leave it. And it's just treating people like dirt is
Yeah.
not a good look. And
Never a
yet
good look.
it is where we are right now. And I have a lot of optimism for the future because I am with the future. I don't think I'd be this optimistic otherwise. I think it's a gift. I thank God for it every day that I get to be with these young people and that I get to work in a place that gives me the freedom to try to do the best I can to help them.
Yeah.
And but with teaching, it's a funny thing. The teacher and the taught together do the teaching. That's exactly how it should be. You learn a lot, and the things that I'm learning are that I'm not sure. Like, well, I know some things for a fact. Like I told you, radio cannot win when it comes to making hit music. It's just not going to happen. Knock yourself out. Come back and see me in 10 years and say, all right, well, maybe you were right. But there's a lot of things that can be done if linear media ever comes back. There are some examples, as I told you earlier, of where it succeeds. But what we have to do is we have to say to ourselves, uh, eliminate the greed factor. What we've done in this country, we've consolidated ourselves out of every bit of creativity. We've created situations with phones, one of the most wonderful inventions in the world. And yet, um, we also know that Google is not sitting around doing nothing. They're writing algorithms to get you to look at their material more.
That's right.
And Apple and all the rest of them, the Magnificent Seven, they want us to become part of it. Now, the talk that Apple may have these new glasses that will be like the ones that Zuckerberg is trying to sell to everybody. The fact that you could walk around with AI, and that's another issue, AI in the classroom. I say knock yourself out, use it for research. It's a wonderful thing, but don't submit it as a student at New York University. Just don't do it. Because if you do it, it's your education. I
That's
got
right.
my education.
That's
If
such
you
a
want
good
your
point.
education, and believe me, a lot of people know that it's not the panacea that everybody thinks it is, and I'm not as scared of it as a lot of people are, because I think that it's there to help until we let it replace us. And my singers who are in my classes, they're worried that you know you'll be able to write songs, which we can do now, have them performed artificially, which we can do now, and that will be better. But remember, artificial intelligence scrapes everything from the universe and puts it together in one place. I'm dumbing down this definition,
Right.
but and so it's only as creative as the next thing. Heidi, the next time you say something creative, it gets stolen. It winds up in the database. It'll come out. It might come out as theirs. They might quote it. They might
Right.
quote it as different. So, I don't think people are going to be as concerned about something like that in the future. What I'd like to see us do is I'd like to see us become more concerned with the very things that got you and I in this business in the first place. I want to entertain. I want to inform.
That's right.
I don't want to do it all for me, although partially it's done for me, but I want to do it because I want to be successful as a communicator. And I want to see people think in terms of a goal bigger than just making money, because making money will get you nothing. You get money by pursuing excellence.
That's right.
You don't get excellence by pursuing money.
That's so true. And I do the same. I want to entertain and inform. I'm not here to agitate and divide. I mean, I'm going to call it out when I call it out, but I'm not here to agitate and divide and get on X and see all those things that people do. And while you were talking about how we need to be loving people more, I was thinking about a passage I posted on my Facebook page the other day. It was in First Corinthians. Knowledge puffs up while love builds up.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's so important that we need to be building each other up instead of tearing each other down. And unfortunately, there's not enough of that nowadays. And it's just, and people need to talk to each other who don't necessarily agree with each other on politics, and then we can come to an understanding. If you don't even know how somebody thinks because you never even bother talking to them, how can you possibly come to any kind of understanding? You can't, and that makes it more difficult. Jerry, what a thrill to talk to you today. God bless you, and I love the effect that you're having on these kids. I mean, such an impact on these young lives.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed every minute of it. And as soon as you said you wanted to talk about my students, I said, thank God I put this together, because that's what I love to talk about. I want you to also understand that we have a lot to look forward to. We have a rocky road ahead, but we have a lot of hope that, and those of us in this industry that we chose, should hang around as long as possible. I say aspire, don't retire. We're going to be needed for certain things. If I'm a parent of a college kid right now, I'm going to be really proud that I made it this far in this world being as tough as it is. I think good times are going to be coming. I think we're going to have some rough road ahead for the next 8 years or so, just from a political and historical and geopolitical point of view. But I think eventually we're going to be reunited again. And I think this generation is going to be the one to pull it together because they're very sensitive, they're very caring, they're very accepting. They don't judge people on their gender, they don't judge them on their race. It is a pleasure to be in a room with people like that. And I think if we communicate to the extent that we can get that feeling across to people, even if it's one-on-one, then we've successfully communicated the message.
I think so. Thank you, Jerry, so much. Appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll put all the information, everybody, up on his on my description. Of course, it's Inside Music Media. You can subscribe to his newsletter. Good information, either from people sending him emails, sneaky emails like, "Did you know this or that?" or people he talks to, people he teaches. It's great information, and it's fun to hear what other people think. And I love to communicate. I like to entertain and inform. But as far as screaming and yelling and dividing and all that kind of stuff, Lord knows I can pound the table and yell about City Hall with the best of them. But kind of getting away from that these days, in case you hadn't noticed. Okay, guys, check out all my stuff. X on all this stuff, Heidi Harris Show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, wherever I am. YouTube, where I'm kind of slowly building my YouTube channel back up. And get on my email list at HeidiHarrisShow.com, and you won't miss any of these videos. Okay, guys, see ya.